The grand hall of Zareth Prime shimmered under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Alien nobles, tall and elegant, whispered among themselves, casting wary glances toward the center of the room. In the midst of their gossip stood Princess Lyria, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Her heart thumped like a war drum, not out of fear of the gathering, but because of the man she was about to meet, her human husband. Marriage had never been about love for Lyria. It had always been about peace. Her world, her people had fought countless wars for generations. Skies were scorched, planets scarred, and countless lives lost to endless conflict. And now, a treaty had been arranged with a species her people barely understood: humans. They were primitive, unpredictable, and, according to the council, fragile. But their leader, her husband, was supposed to bring an end to the chaos. As she walked forward, she caught her reflection in a polished silver wall panel. Her long hair, woven with threads of sapphire and gold, fell over her shoulders. Her uniform, though elegant, reminded her of the heavy responsibility she bore. She was the bridge between two worlds. If she failed, countless lives would be lost. The doors at the far end of the hall swung open. All conversation halted as a human man stepped into the light. He was tall, not as towering as the aliens, but his presence was undeniable. Dark hair framed a sharp face, eyes piercing yet calm. There was no hint of arrogance, no attempt to impress. He simply walked forward, each step measured and steady. Lyria's advisors nudged her forward, whispering instructions. "Speak your vows carefully. Remember, peace comes first. Emotion comes second." She nodded but barely heard them. Her eyes were fixed on him. There was a strange energy about him, an unspoken confidence that made her uneasy. As they approached each other, silence wrapped the room like a thick blanket. She extended her hand and he took it without hesitation. His grip was firm but not aggressive, warm yet commanding. A small smile played on his lips. "I hope we can make this work," he said simply. No grand gestures, no political flattery, just honesty. The ceremony began with the exchange of words meant to bind nations together. Lyria recited promises she had practiced for weeks, promising peace, unity, and collaboration. The human mirrored her words with equal sincerity. Yet, as their voices echoed through the hall, she could feel a tension in the air. It wasn't hostility. It was expectation. Everyone in the room wanted to see if this human could live up to the legends whispered across galaxies. After the vows were spoken, the council presented the first test, a demonstration of human diplomacy. They sent a small strike force of their soldiers to test the alliance. Lyria watched nervously as her new husband stepped forward. The aliens expected him to falter, to be overwhelmed by the advanced technology and sheer numbers. Yet he simply observed, calm and unshaken, analyzing every movement, every pattern. Then, without a single word of complaint, he issued commands, not loudly, not arrogantly, but with precision. His team executed flawlessly. Within moments, the small strike force was neutralized, not destroyed, but disarmed and captured, leaving the aliens stunned. Lyria's breath caught. She had expected a human to fail. Yet here he was, achieving in minutes what took trained alien squads hours. As the crowd murmured, whispers spreading like wildfire, Lyria felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief because the human seemed capable. Fear because she realized she did not fully understand him, or the potential of his kind. Her marriage, meant to secure peace, suddenly felt like stepping into a storm she could neither predict nor control. Later, in the quiet of their shared quarters, Lyria found herself studying him. He sat across the room, cleaning a small, curious device that looked insignificant to her. Yet he handled it with care, almost reverence. "It is nothing," he said when she asked, "just a tool. But it tells me more than it seems." She nodded slowly, sensing layers beneath his calm exterior. Humans were simple yet cunning, fragile yet strong. It was a contradiction she had been warned about. And yet in this contradiction she saw a glimmer of hope, a hope that peace might be possible. Days passed and small incidents began to test her faith in him. Rumors of rebellions, of alien generals doubting her choice, reached their halls. Each time, her husband faced the challenge with patience and strategy. He did not strike blindly or act out of anger. Instead, he observed, learned, and acted with precision that seemed almost superhuman to the aliens. One night, while the two walked along the palace balcony overlooking the city, She asked the question that had been nagging her. Do you truly understand what you are walking into? He looked at her, eyes steady and unyielding. I understand enough, he said softly. And I will do what must be done. Not for glory, not for recognition, but for peace. Lyria studied him, seeing a determination that went beyond mere human pride. There was courage, yes, but also a sense of destiny. She felt a shiver run down her spine. This human, small in comparison to the towering aliens, held a power that words could not describe. The next morning brought news that the first real challenge had arrived. An enemy fleet, far larger and more technologically advanced than anyone expected, had been spotted on the horizon. Panic spread through the council. Messages came from allied worlds pleading for action, for someone to stop the inevitable slaughter. Lyria looked at her husband. His expression was calm, almost casual, but his eyes burned with a fire she had not seen before. Let them come, he said quietly. They will see what humans are capable of. Her stomach twisted. She had married him for calm, for peace. Yet here she was, about to watch him face a force that could destroy everything. A strange mix of dread and anticipation settled over her. She realized this marriage was not just a union of two beings. It was the beginning of a story that would change the galaxy. As the sun set behind the alien skyline, casting long shadows over the city, Lyria whispered to herself, I hope I am ready for what comes next, because deep inside she knew the calm she sought was gone. In its place, a storm was coming, a storm that her human husband would face alone, and one that would leave the universe trembling at the power of humanity. The morning sun rose over Zareth Prime, spilling golden light across the palace gardens. Birds of strange colors sang their alien songs, yet the beauty of the morning could not calm Princess Lyria's nerves. Yesterday's ceremony had ended, but peace was fragile. The first real test of the human strength loomed on the horizon, and she could feel it deep in her chest. She walked silently through the marble corridors, her thoughts heavy. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but her husband's calm demeanor made her question everything she had believed about his kind. To the aliens, humans were fragile, unremarkable, almost insignificant. Yet she had seen a spark in him that morning, a spark that had caught even the council off guard. As she stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city, the air vibrated with the hum of incoming ships. A small patrol fleet, rogue aliens seeking to test the new alliance, had entered Zareth airspace. Lyria's heart skipped. This was the first real opportunity to see her husband in action beyond words or ceremony. Stay behind me, he said, calm and measured, as she joined him. His presence was comforting, yet there was a tension in the air she could not ignore. Do you think he will be ready? She whispered to herself, unsure if anyone could answer her question. The first clash came swiftly. The rogue ships descended with fire and speed, their weapons blazing in the early light. The palace defenses responded, but the aliens' advanced technology seemed no match for the sudden, chaotic attack. Lyria gasped as explosions rocked the city outskirts. Buildings trembled. Civilians screamed and ran for cover. Yet amid the chaos, her husband moved with purpose. He didn't rush or panic. He simply observed. His eyes scanned the battlefield like a predator studying every move of its prey. Lyria's stomach twisted. She had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even failure. What she saw instead was control. Perfect, unshakable control. He called out instructions, his voice steady and clear. Divide the flanks. Focus on their weaker ships first. Use their momentum against them. The soldiers around him, humans and aliens alike, followed without hesitation. His strategy was simple, yet astonishingly effective. In moments, rogue ships were disarmed, trapped in clever formations and forced to retreat. Not a single human casualty occurred, and only minor damage to alien forces. Lyria could not move. Her mouth felt dry. She had come to witness a test, but what she saw surpassed all expectations. A human had just outmaneuvered trained alien squads in minutes. Her mind raced. How could one human, with no superior technology, achieve what so many believed was impossible? As the dust settled, her husband returned to her side. He wiped his hands on his uniform casually, as if defeating a fleet were a trivial task. They will learn, he said softly. Every opponent teaches us something. Today we learned their weakness. Lyria stared at him. The calmness in his eyes, the quiet confidence. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. The council had spoken of humans as clever, yes, but this was different. This was something beyond cleverness. This was instinct, skill, and determination fused into one unstoppable force. Days passed and small skirmishes continued across the outer cities. Each time, her husband faced them alone, using strategies the aliens could not have imagined. He turned defensive positions into traps, simple devices into weapons of brilliance. Even when vastly outnumbered, he never faltered. Aliens who had mocked humans now whispered in awe. Lyria observed him closely. She noticed how he anticipated moves before they happened, how he seemed to predict the enemy's thoughts. There were moments when she feared he might be reckless, but he always proved precise. Each victory was clean, calculated, and efficient. She had expected a husband to bring calm, yet he brought something else: awe, fear, and a growing sense that humanity was unlike anything the galaxy had known. One evening, she followed him to a small, secluded courtyard. He was working with a device, simple to the untrained eye but complex in function. Sparks flew and small mechanical parts moved in ways that made her head spin. "What are you doing?" she asked, curiosity mingling with concern. He smiled faintly. "I am preparing. Knowledge and preparation are as important as strength. The next attack will not wait for us. We must be ready." Her admiration grew, but so did her worry. She had married him to prevent war, to keep peace. Yet here she was, watching him prepare for battles she had only imagined in nightmares. Could one human truly stand against so many enemies? The next morning brought more news. Scouts reported a massive army moving through the outer planets. It was larger than any previous force, with advanced weaponry and ruthless commanders. The council panicked, and whispers of fear reached every corner of the palace. Lyria looked at her husband. He did not flinch. His eyes were steady, unwavering, yet there was a fire burning behind them. "Let them come," he said. "Let them see why humans are feared." Her heart pounded. She had wanted calm, and instead she was about to witness something extraordinary, something that would change her understanding of humans forever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace gardens, Lyria whispered to herself, "I hope I am ready to see what comes next." Because deep inside, she knew that humanity's true power was only beginning to reveal itself, and that she had married into a storm far greater than she had imagined. The palace on Zareth Prime felt strangely quiet. For the first time since her marriage, Princess Lyria walked through the halls without the constant hum of alarms or the whispers of fear from the council. Yet the calm felt fragile, like a thin sheet of ice over a roaring river. She could feel it in her bones. The storm was coming. Her human husband moved through the palace with ease, greeting soldiers and council members with polite nods. To any outsider, it might have seemed like ordinary life, a simple day in the life of a newlywed. But Lyria knew better. She watched the way he studied maps, inspected weapons, and spoke with commanders. Every action was deliberate, precise, and purposeful. She followed him to the training grounds, a vast area filled with soldiers practicing combat drills. The humans and aliens trained side by side, yet there was a difference in the humans' methods. He taught them to think, to anticipate, to move like a single organism instead of individuals. Alien generals watched in disbelief. They had always relied on strength and numbers, but this human emphasized strategy, adaptability, and observation. "Do they really listen to him?" Lyria whispered to her aide, still shocked by what she had seen in the previous skirmishes. "They have no choice," her aide replied. "He commands respect without demanding it. Even the bravest aliens hesitate when he speaks." Lyria's mind raced. She had expected a human to bring peace, but instead, he brought understanding and unity, something far more powerful than weapons. The soldiers were learning quickly, and she could see sparks of fear and awe in the eyes of those who once doubted humanity. As the sun began to set, the human husband walked to the edge of the training grounds and surveyed the horizon. His eyes narrowed, taking in the distant mountains where scouts had reported enemy movements. He was calm, yet focused, every muscle in his body tense with anticipation. Lyria approached him quietly. "Do you think we can really stop them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned to her, a small, confident smile playing on his lips. "We won't just stop them," he said. "We will make them regret ever thinking they could challenge humanity." She felt a shiver run down her spine. His words were not boastful. They were a promise, a warning. Something in his tone told her that he had faced impossible odds before, and had always found a way to win. The night fell over Zareth Prime, and the city lights flickered like distant stars. Lyria lay awake in her quarters, listening to the faint hum of the palace's energy shields. She tried to imagine what was coming. The enemy forces were larger, stronger, and more advanced than anything they had faced before. And yet the calmness of her human husband filled her with a strange mix of hope and dread. The next morning, she joined him in the observation tower. Scouts had reported movement. Enemy ships on the edge of the system, slow but deliberate. Lyria's stomach tightened. This was no longer a small skirmish. This was the beginning of a full-scale invasion. Her husband studied the readings silently, then turned to her. "We have time," he said. "Time to prepare, to plan. Panicking now will only make things worse." She nodded, trying to mirror his composure, but inside her mind raced. She had married for peace, yet she had never anticipated the weight of the storm that was about to hit. Still, she began to understand something crucial. This human was different. Not just strong, not just clever, but patient. He did not rush into danger. He did not fight for pride. He fought for results, and that made him unpredictable to the enemy, a weapon they could not understand. As the day wore on, small incidents tested their readiness. Minor attacks on outlying colonies came in bursts. Quick raids meant to probe weaknesses. Each time her husband responded with calm precision. He anticipated every move, outthinking the attackers, capturing some, disarming others, and retreating when necessary. The alien council was astonished. How does one human accomplish so much? They whispered among themselves. Lyria watched him work tirelessly, speaking to commanders, adjusting plans, and encouraging soldiers. There was no trace of fear in his eyes. Even when a transport ship exploded unexpectedly, he remained composed, directing rescue operations and countermeasures with flawless efficiency. The more she observed him, the more she realized that humans were not just physically capable, they were resilient, adaptable, and fearless in ways her people had never imagined. That evening, she found him standing alone on the balcony, staring at the stars. The soft wind carried the faint scent of alien flora, but it could not mask the tension in the air. Lyria stepped beside him. "They will attack soon," she said softly. "Are you ready?" He didn't look at her immediately. Instead, he traced constellations in the alien sky. "I am always ready," he said finally. "But the key is not just being ready. It is understanding your enemy, knowing their weakness and striking when the time is right." Lyria felt a chill. She had expected bravery, skill, and strength. What she saw instead was something far more terrifying: calm confidence. She realized that whatever came, she would be powerless to stop him. And yet, she trusted him completely. As night deepened, the city settled into a fragile peace. The citizens and soldiers alike prepared for what was coming, unaware of the full scale of the threat approaching their world. Lyria sat alone in her quarters, thinking about the human she had married. She had wanted calm, she had wanted peace, but she now understood that true calm was impossible in the presence of a force like him. And somewhere in the distance, the first echoes of the incoming enemy fleet began to stir. The calm before the storm was over. The first light of dawn barely touched the skies of Zareth Prime when alarms blared across the city. Princess Lyria awoke to the urgent sounds, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment she had been dreading, yet secretly anticipating. The enemy fleet, larger and more dangerous than any skirmish before, had arrived at their doorstep. She rushed to the observation tower, where her human husband already stood, calm as if he had been waiting for this moment all his life. The city stretched beneath them, a maze of towers, shields, and soldiers ready for battle. But even with all the preparations, the sheer size of the incoming enemy forces made the palace defenses look fragile. "They've brought more ships than we anticipated," one of the commanders said, panic lacing his voice. "They'll tear through us in hours." Her husband didn't flinch. He studied the approaching fleet, his eyes scanning every detail. They may have numbers, but they underestimate us, he said quietly. Watch and learn. Lyria felt a chill. She had married him to bring peace, yet here he was, standing alone against what seemed like certain doom. The first wave of enemy ships entered their space with overwhelming speed, firing energy blasts that lit the skies with deadly light. Aliens and humans scrambled to defend their city, but panic spread quickly among the soldiers. Then he acted, not with brute force, not with a roar or shout, but with precise, calculated movements. He directed the defense grid, positioning soldiers where they were most effective. He used the enemy's own momentum against them, turning their attacks into traps. The human strategy was flawless. Lyria's eyes widened as she watched. A squadron of enemy drones approached, dozens of them, faster than any human or alien had seen. She expected him to retreat to call for reinforcements. Instead, he leapt forward, agile and confident. In moments, he had disabled the drones using clever maneuvers, exploiting their weaknesses, and turning the tide in favor of the defenders. Impossible, muttered one alien general. No one human could do this. Lyria's heart raced. She had begun to understand the truth. Humans were not only clever but fearless. They could face danger that would paralyze others and act with a clarity that seemed almost unnatural. The enemy then sent in the next wave, towering combat mechs, each as tall as a building and bristling with energy weapons. Soldiers froze in terror at the sight, but her husband faced them without hesitation. Using speed, intelligence, and impeccable timing, he targeted weak points, avoiding the main attacks and dismantling the mechs one by one. The battlefield was chaos. Explosions rocked the city, energy beams cut through the sky, and alien soldiers shouted orders, their voices cracking under pressure. And through it all, the human moved like a storm contained in calm waters. Every action was precise, every command exact. Lyria felt a mix of fear and awe. She had wanted peace, yet now she was witnessing the raw power of a human unshaken by overwhelming odds. The aliens who had doubted humanity now whispered in disbelief, and some began to follow his orders without hesitation. Amid the battle, she noticed the enemy commander, a towering alien with 4 arms and glowing red eyes, observing the human with sharp interest. He was clearly trying to understand the human's tactics, yet every move the alien made was anticipated and countered. Her husband didn't just fight. He outthought, outmaneuvered, and outlasted every attack. Hours passed and the first wave of enemy forces was defeated. The city remained standing, relatively unscathed thanks to one human. Soldiers, both human and alien, stared in awe. The council members were speechless, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Lyria approached him as he returned to the palace courtyard, his uniform slightly scorched, yet his eyes bright and alert. You faced them alone, she whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. He shrugged lightly. Not alone. They fought too. But fear doesn't win battles. Strategy does. Her stomach churned. She had wanted calm, yet now she realized that the calm she sought was irrelevant. Peace was fragile. War could erupt at any moment. And yet with him by her side, she felt a strange sense of hope. Humanity, she now understood, was a force the universe could not ignore. The sun set over Zareth Prime, painting the skies red and gold. The enemy's retreating ships left behind debris, smoke, and a reminder of the chaos that had been narrowly avoided. The city celebrated the victory, yet Lyria could see the worry lingering in her husband's eyes. This was only the beginning. As night fell, the council gathered in the grand hall, their faces a mixture of fear and reverence. That human, he is not just clever, he is unstoppable, one whispered. Lyria felt a chill. She had married him for peace, and instead, she had found herself at the heart of a storm. But deep down, she knew the truth. Humanity had a power no one could understand, a power that would shape the galaxy's future. And somewhere in the shadows, a new threat was preparing, stronger than before, unaware that one human stood ready to crush armies by himself. The morning sky of Zareth Prime was heavy with tension. Smoke from the previous skirmishes still lingered over the city, painting the horizon in shades of gray and red. Soldiers lined the walls and streets, their eyes anxious, their hands gripping weapons tightly. Even with all their training, fear hung thick in the air. The enemy had returned, larger and more ruthless than before, and this time, There would be no small skirmishes, only full-scale war. Princess Lyria stood at the edge of the palace balcony, watching the approaching fleet. Her stomach churned with a mix of dread and anticipation. She had seen her human husband defeat squads, drones, and mechs, but now he would face an army, a true test of his power. Every alien general muttered nervously about the impossible odds, whispering prayers that he would survive. Her husband remained calm, scanning the horizon with steady eyes. "They think numbers can defeat us," he said softly. "They do not understand humans. And they will learn." The first wave descended. Towering battle machines, armed with devastating energy cannons, moved in perfect unison. Alien ships darted through the skies like metallic predators, firing at every defense point. Chaos erupted across the city. Soldiers shouted, civilians screamed, and the ground trembled under the onslaught. But the human did not hesitate. With precise movements and calculated orders, he turned chaos into strategy. He divided the defenses into segments, using decoys, traps, and clever maneuvers that seemed impossible. Aliens who had once mocked humanity now followed his instructions with wide-eyed amazement. Lyria watched, breathless, as he leapt into the fray himself. Unlike the aliens who relied on overwhelming force, he used speed, intelligence, and unexpected tactics. He dodged energy blasts with uncanny reflexes, dismantled enemy mechs by targeting weak points, and used the environment to his advantage. Every strike was precise, every move calculated. The battlefield itself seemed to bend to his will. "Look at him," whispered one alien general, voice trembling. "One human, and he controls the entire fight." Hours passed. Wave after wave of enemy forces poured in, each stronger and more numerous than the last. Yet the human never faltered. He moved like a storm contained in calm waters, striking decisively, retreating only when necessary, and always anticipating the enemy's next move. Lyria could hardly believe her eyes. This was no ordinary human. This was something extraordinary, something the galaxy had never seen. At one point, the enemy deployed a massive siege crawler, machine larger than any building in the city, bristling with weapons and shields. Soldiers froze in fear, whispering that nothing could stop it. Her husband smiled faintly. "Watch closely," he said. Within moments he had studied the machine, noticing a tiny exposed joint near its power core. With careful timing, he scaled nearby debris, dodged energy beams, and struck the weak point with a precision shot that disabled the machine instantly. It collapsed in a thunderous explosion, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Lyria felt her heart pound in her chest. She had thought humans were fragile, weak, and unpredictable. Now she knew the truth. One human could change the course of a battle that should have been lost. One human could crush armies, not with brute force alone, but with intelligence, courage, and unmatched skill. The enemy commander, a massive alien with glowing red eyes and 4 razor-sharp arms, appeared in the midst of the chaos. He roared, unleashing a barrage of attacks meant to crush the human. Soldiers fell back in fear, expecting certain death. But her husband met the commander head-on. He dodged, countered, and used clever tactics to turn the alien's strength against him. Blow after blow, strike after strike, he maneuvered with speed and precision that seemed impossible for any human. Lyria could not tear her eyes away. She had married him hoping for calm, yet she watched him single-handedly crush armies and face a commander who dwarfed him in size and strength. Her chest swelled with pride, but her stomach twisted with fear. Could anyone survive such power? Hours melted into each other. The battlefield became a blur of explosions, flying debris, and strategic genius. Her husband's presence inspired the soldiers. Alien troops who had doubted humans now fought with renewed courage, their fear replaced with awe. Civilians cheered from the walls, watching as one human proved the legends true. Humanity was a force unlike any other. Finally, as the sun began to set, the last of the enemy forces retreated. Smoke rose over the battlefield, but the city remained standing. Her husband stood in the center, exhausted but unbroken. Soldiers and generals alike approached, awe and respect written across their faces. Princess Lyria stepped forward, her heart racing. She could hardly find words. You did it," she whispered. He shook his head slightly. "It is not over," he said. This was only the first wave. There will be others, stronger, smarter, but they will all learn the same lesson. Her chest tightened. She had wanted calm, peace, and stability. Instead, she had found herself witnessing something far greater, a force that could not be contained, a human who could crush armies and change the course of war with his own hands. As night fell over Zareth Prime, she realized the truth. The universe had underestimated humans for too long. One human could inspire, lead, and destroy enemies in ways the galaxy had never imagined. And she had married him, not just for peace, but to witness history in the making. Somewhere in the distance, shadows stirred. A new threat was forming, one more cunning and dangerous than any before. But Lyria knew, with unwavering certainty, that her husband, this human, would face it. And when he did, the universe would tremble. The battlefield had gone silent, but the calm was deceptive. Smoke and ash drifted across Zareth Prime as the soldiers cleaned weapons, tended to the wounded, and rebuilt shattered defenses. Yet Princess Lyria knew that the victory they had just won was only temporary. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the enemy commander, larger, stronger, and far more cunning than anything they had faced, was preparing for the ultimate strike. Her human husband stood at the center of the courtyard, studying a holographic map of the surrounding planets. His eyes, steady and unyielding, traced the enemy movements with precision. Soldiers gathered around, awaiting instructions, but he seemed to operate in a world of his own, analyzing threats and devising strategies before they even materialized. "They're not finished," she whispered to a nearby officer. "They'll come back stronger." "They never thought one human could defeat their armies," the officer replied. "Now they will send their best, their strongest. And even that may not be enough." Lyria felt a chill. She had hoped that peace might last, but the calm was over. This was the ultimate test, a challenge unlike anything they had faced before. Days passed in preparation. The human worked tirelessly, training soldiers, improving defenses, and studying enemy tactics. Aliens who had doubted him began to trust him completely, following his orders with discipline they had never shown before. Lyria observed quietly, noting his unwavering focus, his calm determination, and the intelligence that seemed to anticipate every possible outcome. Then the enemy arrived. A fleet larger than any before, accompanied by the commander himself. He was massive, far larger than any human or alien she had ever seen, with 4 glowing arms and weapons that could level mountains. His ships blotted out the sun, and his voice, booming and commanding, echoed across the battlefield. The soldiers froze in fear. They had fought many battles, but this was different. This was the enemy at its ultimate strength, and the commander's reputation alone was enough to strike terror into the bravest hearts. Her human husband stepped forward. Calm, focused, and resolute, he surveyed the commander and the fleet with an unflinching gaze. "They do not understand humans," he said softly. "But they will learn." The battle began. The enemy commander advanced, his ships firing energy beams that shredded buildings and tore through defenses. The ground shook under his steps, and his army moved with terrifying coordination. Every alien general predicted failure, but the human ignored them. He did not panic, he did not hesitate. He acted. Using intelligence, speed, and strategy, he turned the enemy's strength against them. He set traps, redirected attacks, and used terrain and structures to his advantage. Each move was precise, calculated, and effective. Soldiers who had doubted him now followed his every command without question. Lyria watched, her heart pounding. She had hoped for peace when she married him, but what she witnessed now was far more astonishing. One human stood against the ultimate enemy, and not just survived, but controlled the battlefield. Then the commander descended, landing directly in front of the human. His glowing red eyes locked onto him, and he raised all 4 arms, preparing for a devastating attack. Soldiers scattered, expecting the human to fall instantly, but he did not flinch. He dodged with uncanny reflexes, countered with strength and precision, and exploited every weakness the commander revealed. Blow after blow, strike after strike, he maneuvered like a force of nature, always one step ahead. The commander roared in frustration. For the first time, he had met an opponent who could not be easily defeated. Lyria could hardly breathe. She had married him for calm, yet she was witnessing the extraordinary power of humanity in its purest form. One man standing against an alien titan, holding the line and inspiring an army with every movement. The impossible was happening before her eyes. Hours passed. The commander unleashed every weapon, every tactic, every ounce of strength, but her husband adapted. He learned in real time, predicting attacks, countering with intelligence and skill, and always remaining focused. Soldiers began to cheer, inspired by his bravery. Aliens who had doubted humans now knelt in respect, witnessing something they had never believed possible. Finally, the commander hesitated. His attacks faltered, his confidence shaken. The human moved in for the final strike. With precision and courage, he struck the commander's weak point, dismantling the alien's defenses and forcing a retreat. The battlefield fell silent once more. Princess Lyria approached him, awestruck. You've done the impossible," she whispered. He shook his head slightly, exhaustion visible in his stance. "It's never impossible," he said quietly. "You just have to understand your enemy and act when the time is right." She realized then that she had not married just a man, but a force of nature. A human who could face overwhelming odds, adapt and conquer. Peace might still be fragile, but humanity had proven its power, unshakable, intelligent and unstoppable. As night fell, the stars above Zareth Prime seemed brighter, almost as if the universe itself acknowledged what had just happened. Lyria knew one thing with certainty. Humanity had changed the course of the galaxy forever, and somewhere beyond the horizon, new threats would rise. But now there was no fear. There was only respect, awe, and the knowledge that one human could stand against anything, and win. The morning after the ultimate battle was quiet, almost eerily so. Smoke and debris from the battlefield still lingered over Zareth Prime, but the city itself stood tall, unbroken. Princess Lyria walked through the streets, her heart heavy with awe and relief. She had married her human husband hoping for peace, but what she had witnessed was far more profound. A demonstration of humanity's strength, courage, and intelligence. Citizens emerged from shelters and homes, gazing in disbelief at the aftermath. Buildings bore marks of destruction, yet the human effort, strategy, and foresight had ensured minimal casualties. Soldiers, both alien and human, stood in formation, weary but victorious, and at the center of it all stood him, her husband, the man who had crushed entire armies single-handedly. The council gathered in the grand hall, their expressions a mixture of shock, reverence, and newfound respect. Aliens who had once doubted humans whispered quietly among themselves. They underestimated them. "All of them," one elder muttered. "One human, and he changed everything." Lyria approached him as he stood quietly, surveying the battlefield in the distance. Dust clung to his uniform, his hands bore minor scrapes, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. You did more than I could have imagined," she said softly, awe filling her voice. He turned to her, a small, calm smile on his lips. "I did what needed to be done," he said. "Not for glory, not for recognition, for peace. For everyone who calls this place home." Her chest tightened. She had wanted calm, she had wanted stability, yet she realized now that peace was not passive. It required courage, intelligence, and sometimes sheer force. Humanity, she now understood, embodied all of these traits in ways the galaxy had never seen before. News of the humans' victory spread quickly. Word reached neighboring systems, and alien nations that had once feared humans began to reassess their assumptions. Stories of a single man standing against impossible odds, defeating armies and inspiring both humans and aliens alike, traveled faster than any message or transmission. The legend of the human warrior began to grow, a tale that would be whispered across galaxies for generations. In the aftermath, the alien generals who had doubted him approached cautiously. One of them, tall and armored, bowed deeply. We were wrong," he admitted. "Your species, your strength, your intelligence, it surpasses anything we imagined." Her husband nodded humbly. "Strength is not enough. Strategy, courage, and unity matter more. And humans have all three." Lyria watched as he moved among the soldiers, offering encouragement, guidance, and reassurance. He did not seek praise, yet respect followed him wherever he went. She realized then why the galaxy would fear humans. Not for cruelty, not for domination, but because of the unstoppable combination of intelligence, adaptability, and courage that defined them. The princess returned to her quarters that evening, her mind still buzzing with the events of the day. She sat quietly reflecting on what had happened. She had married a human for peace, and in doing so she had witnessed history. The human she had married had faced impossible odds, defeated armies, and inspired a galaxy to respect and fear humanity. Yet, despite the awe and admiration, she felt a deeper understanding of her husband's character. He did not fight for recognition. He did not seek power. He acted because it was necessary. His courage and intelligence were not tools of dominance. They were weapons of protection, designed to preserve life and uphold justice. As the sun set over Zareth Prime, casting long shadows across the city, she stood beside him on the palace balcony. The stars twinkled above, and the wind carried the faint scent of alien flora. "The galaxy will never be the same," she said softly. "No," he replied, eyes on the horizon. "And that is only the beginning. Humanity has only just begun to show its strength. There will be more challenges, more enemies, but we will face them together." She looked at him, a mix of pride, awe, and love filling her heart. She had married for peace, and she had found far more. A protector, a leader, a force that could inspire entire worlds. Humanity, she now knew, was a power that could not be ignored. That night, as the city slept under a blanket of stars, Lyria understood something profound. Humans were different. One human could change the course of battles, of wars, of history itself. And one human, her human, had done exactly that. The galaxy would remember this day. The galaxy would remember the human who crushed armies by himself. And she would stand beside him, knowing that she had witnessed the legend of humanity's triumph. Because in the end, it was not just a victory of war, it was a victory of courage, intelligence, and the unstoppable spirit of humans. And the universe would never be the same again.